at, we can't even keep these holy days right. Some people say you don't supposed to add a month. Some people say you're supposed to add a month. Some people believe that the first crescent is the new moon. Some people believe the full moon is the new moon. Some people even go as far as saying you're supposed to keep the Sabbath by watching the phases of the moon. We are divided, but we all claim to have the truth. Do you realize somebody's teaching a doctrine of demons? Somebody's wrong, and guess what? They're using the Bible to support it. Do you understand that? We all can't be right. We're not right. There's only one truth. One truth. And everybody's so focused on Israel coming together and rubbing elbows together. How are we going to come together if we all are not believing and practicing the same thing? Brother Shaul said it like this. He said that we should have the same mind and the same judgment. Speak the same thing. That there be no division among us. But you don't see that among Israel today. You don't see it among the Hebrew Israelites. You don't see that. You don't see it among the Yahudi or the Jews, the black Jews or the white Jews. You don't see that. We're divided. And while we divide, he said, where there is envy, strife, and division, are you not carnal and walk as men? We're going to get into that in our next. When he says that, he's talking about human nature. But enough of that. Let's keep it moving. Let's go to Matthew chapter 7, verse 13. He says, I forgot the, well, I did mention it, but number 1319, the didaskalia, it means to teach. When it says doctrine, that's the word for doctrine. Matthew chapter 7, verse 13, listen to what Mashiach said. Enter in by the narrow gate. For wide, listen to what he say now. For wide is the gate and broad is the way that leads to destruction, and many are those who enter in by it. Many. There's a wide and a broad gate, and it's going to have a lot of people on this particular pathway heading toward that particular gate. It's a lot of people on that. Guess who on that? These people. But guess who's included in these people? Hebrews, Israelites, and Jews are included in this number. People don't like to hear that though. See? When you go back and you look at the history of Israel, when the tribes divided, ask yourself why this happened. Because remember, we're supposed to learn from those things because they were written for that purpose. You had the 10 tribes, the house of Israel, and the 2 tribes, the house of Yehudah. When the 10 tribes went under Jeroboam, what did he do? We looked at it. See, we already talked about the priesthood and what it means to be a priest. But he said, I'm not going to make priests of the Levites. Y'all can go on and get up out of here, basically. I'm going to choose some other people. I'm going to make priests out of them. See? He went out of order. Okay? Remember, this was the larger group of Israel. See? The larger group. He didn't keep things according to what was being done in the house of Judah. Now, eventually, we know the house of Judah, they would go astray, but at that time, the house of Judah was still doing things the right way. Okay, they had their mishaps as well, which led them ultimately into the Babylonian captivity. But the point is, we're looking at the larger of the two, the large group versus the small group. Something's being taught there. So he didn't want them going up to the feast days in Jerusalem. So he said, I'm going to set up my own feast days. See? And then it's not like you got we're currently in the 7th month. Not like the feast in the 7th month. You know what we're going to do? We're going to set ours up in the month afterwards. This is what we're going to do. See? We're going to set up God in Dan, and we're going to set up God in Bethel. Do you see what's happening? He's showing us in his word the corruption that's going to be even among Israel. But how many people are ready to accept that? 400 prophets and 450 prophets, 850 false prophets of Israel. 850 false prophets of Israel versus the one true prophet, Eliyahu. That story, that narrative is there for a reason. Some of us is going to be over here. He said, let's continue. Verse 14, Matthew chapter 7. He says, how narrow is the gate, and restricted is the way that leads to life. But listen to what he says. Few are those that find it. You know, few are those that find it. It's not going to be a lot of people. And that's the way we're supposed to go, because when he started off, he says, enter in by the narrow gate. That's his instruction. That's the command. Enter in by the narrow gate. Wide is the gate and broad is the way that leads to destruction, and many are those who enter by it. See, that many goes right back to deceives the whole world. The world wandered after the beast. Many false prophets shall rise up and deceive many. See? They all on that wide, see, and it's comfortable, you know, because you got a whole bunch of people there. You don't want to be on that side over there where they're looking, they're searching. At least it appears that way. Not realizing they're going the right direction. But you rather feel safe because you got a whole bunch of people over here. You don't want to be a part of what appears to be the outcast group. You see what I'm saying? Let's move on. Let's move on. Okay. Now, let's get to our little chart up here so we can finish this up. Now, in an earlier segment, it was mentioned about a duality, right, in Holy Scripture. So what we're going to see, we're just going to run through a few passages. Most of these passages we did go through before, so I'm just going to run through them. I'm not going to, you know, be on them too long because we've talked about it pretty much. All right. So the first passage is coming from Daniel chapter 2, and it's talking about this image. All right. And we just want to, what we're going to do right now, we're going to make some comparisons. All right. So he says, verse 31, Daniel chapter 2, verse 31, you, O king, saw and behold a great image. This image which was mighty and whose brightness was excellent stood before you, and its appearance was terrifying. As for this image, its head was of fine gold, its breast and its arms of silver, its belly and thighs of brass, its legs of iron, its feet part of iron and part of clay. All right. And then you drop down to verse 37. It says, you, O king, are king of kings, to whom the mighty one of heaven has given the kingdom, the power, the strength, and the glory. Wherever the children of men dwell, he has given the animals of the field and the birds of the sky into your hand, and has made you rule over them all. You are the head of gold. So again, this represents the seed of the serpent. Keep that in mind. But now we want to add to that. In Isaiah 14:4, we taught that thou shalt take up this proverb against the king of Babylon, okay, and say, how has the oppressor ceased? The golden city ceased. And we wanted to look at one, the king of Babylon, right? And then the idea, even the connection of the golden city. But think about now how King Nebuchadnezzar represented that head of gold. And we're just making comparisons right now. Similarities, right? But let's drop down. Even though we find out in verse 4, it says you shall take up this proverb against the king of Babylon. When we get down to chapter 12, verse 12, excuse me, it says, how are you fallen from heaven, O shining one, son of the morning? So what we're actually being shown, as we discussed in a previous segment, when you get into the leaders of these world kingdoms, in these empires, guess who's over them? The unclean spirits, the demons, the fallen angels. Okay? Remember we looked at that account in Daniel where he prayed, fasted for 21 days? When the angel finally got him a message, he told Daniel, the day you set your face before the Most High, he answered you. And when I was coming to give you the message, I was withstood by the king of Persia, or the prince of Persia. and that they was basically going back and forth for 21 days until Michael came to help. Michael, one of the other archangels, came and helped, and then he was able to get Daniel that message, and it took 21 days for that to happen. That angel was not wrestling with the actual prince in the flesh and blood. He was wrestling with the representative that was over that prince. You see? That's why we went to that. So when he talks about the king of Babylon, yeah, in one part, we do see that he's talking about the actual king of Babylon, but what the Creator wanted us to do, open thou mine eyes that I may behold wondrous things out of your Torah. He's not just talking about the physical king, he's also talking about the power that's over that physical king, which we find out was the shining one, son of the morning. Okay, keep these things in mind. Let's make a contrast now. We have the contrast in Revelation chapter 12, verse 4. Listen to what it said. We still listen, and the image here that in Daniel is the image of a body. Okay? Romans chapter 12, verse 4. I'm sorry, I said Revelation. I meant Romans chapter 12, verse 4. For even as we have many members in one body, and all the members don't have the same function, so we, who are many, are one body in Messiah, and individually members of one another. So what Brother Shaul is doing, he's using the same symbolism of an image of the body, right? But in this particular case, you got the body. Now, all of the members of the body of the Messiah, that's the people, what you consider the assembly or the church. But listen to what he says when he wrote to the Colossians in chapter 1 and verse 18. He says, he is the head of the body. Now, in contrast to what we saw in this image, it says Babylon was that head of gold. Nebuchadnezzar, who was the king of Babylon, was the head of gold on that image. But in this other image, it's Mashiach Yahushua, who's the head. So do you see the contrast that's being made? So that, in other words, there are two bodies that's being formed. One body represents the seed of the serpent. The other body represents Mashiach Yahushua, or represents Yahweh. Okay? He says, he is the head of the body, the assembly, who is the beginning, the firstborn from the dead, that in all things he might have the preeminence. And once again, this is representing the seed of Elohim. Okay? The duality. Let's go to our second point. And now we go to Revelation chapter 17. He carried me away in the spirit into a wilderness. I saw a woman sitting on a scarlet-colored beast, full of the names of blasphemy, having 7 heads and 10 horns. Again, this was another manifestation of that very same empire. Okay, 7 heads, 10 horns. But in this particular vision, what Yochanan is actually seeing, he's seeing a woman riding this beast. And the fact that the woman is riding the beast, it indicates that that beast was supporting the woman. But the fact that the woman was riding it, think about a rider on a horse, that woman also had control over that beast. Okay? But this is, again, a woman. Now, I don't have this passage up here, but remember when we look in Zechariah, don't remember the chapter, it was either chapter, was it 14? But anyway, no, it may have been chapter 5. But anyway, it's in Zechariah. But we saw the image of the woman. Matter of fact, it's because it mentioned the stork. It said that two other women had came with the wings of a stork. And it took this, like there was some type of canister. And in the canister, that was this woman. But then the two women came with the wings of a stork, and it took it and they put it in the land of Shinar, and it said, this is wickedness, etc., etc., etc. Okay? And I'm saying these things, and I know I'm kind of running through them, but we already talked about it, so hopefully for those who have been following along, when you hear it being mentioned, you'll be able to, oh yeah, I do remember reading this, I do remember, talking about that. Okay? We're just making these different points. All right? So that is about the woman. And this particular woman in Revelation 17:3, still, again, on the seed of the serpent. Now, the contrast is in Revelation chapter 12 and verse 1. It says, a great sign was seen in the heavens, a woman clothed with the sun, and the moon under her feet, and on her head a crown of 12 stars. This represents the seed of Elohim. This represents Israel. Okay? Israel. Israel is the family of Elohim. Israel is the nation of Elohim. Israel is the church or the assembly of Elohim. Israel, Israel, Israel. That's why we also had to discuss who is Israel, who is included in this family, who is included in this nation, who is included in this church. You have to meet that criteria. What's the criteria? Obedience to the Torah and belief in Yahushua as our Savior and Redeemer. That's the criteria. And it doesn't make a difference about your ethnicity, doesn't make a difference about your nationality, doesn't make a difference about your race. It makes a difference whether or not you agree to the covenant that was established by Moshe. You accept that covenant, and you now accept Yahushua as your Savior and as your Redeemer. The acceptance of that covenant meaning that you are now agreeing to be obedient to the voice of Yah. Okay? Now the last point, and then we're going to be done. In Revelation chapter 13, verse 16, it says, He causes all, the small and the great, the rich and the poor, and the free and the slave, to be given marks on their right hands or on their foreheads. Okay? Their right hands or on their foreheads. Excuse me for a second.